You ever get a feeling that someone's smile just isn't right? Not like crooked teeth or fake lips. I mean that deep, hollow grin that doesn't reach the eyes. The kind that tells you everything you need to know about a person, even if they're saying all the right words. That was my mother-in-law. From the day I met her, her smile never once felt warm. It was cold, calculated, and sharp like glass. I remember the first time I shook her hand. It felt like a test I didn't study for. She looked me up and down like I was a piece of cheap furniture her son brought home from the thrift store. And to be fair, I wasn't what she expected. I wasn't from some perfect pedigree or raised in a gated community. I didn't wear pearls or speak in hushed tones. I was real, maybe too real for her taste. And that, apparently, was enough to make me a threat. My husband, Nick, always played mediator. He'd laugh off her snide comments or change the subject when things got tense. "She just needs time," he'd say. "She'll come around." But she didn't. If anything, she circled me like a hawk, looking for a weakness. And when she found one, oh, she dug. It got worse after we got married. She came by constantly, uninvited, just dropping off soup or checking in. I'd find things moved in the kitchen, my clothes in the laundry machine when I hadn't touched them. Little reminders that this house, our house, was still within her reach. Nick didn't see it, or maybe he didn't want to. Then came the lasagna. It was a Sunday evening. She called that morning, cheerfully insincere, and said she wanted to bring dinner over. Said she made my favorite lasagna, which was already weird because I hate lasagna. I'd told her that 3 times, but whatever. I figured maybe she forgot, or maybe it was her way of extending an olive branch. I was tired. I wanted peace. So I said, okay. She showed up at 6 sharp, holding a casserole dish like it was the Holy Grail. She kissed Nick on the cheek, barely acknowledged me, and said, "I made something special just for you." I forced a smile. "Thanks. That's nice of you." We sat at the table and she served it up. It looked normal at first. Cheesy, saucy, bubbling. But when I cut into it, something felt off. The inside had this greenish tint. Not spinach, not herbs. Green. Like moldy leftovers or bad cheese. I pushed the fork around, trying to be polite, but every instinct in me screamed, "Don't eat that." Nick was already digging in. So was she. I kept watching them, wondering if I was imagining it, but I swear, they were eating from different parts of the tray. She noticed I hadn't taken a bite. "What's wrong?" she asked sweetly. "It's homemade. I thought you liked homemade food." I looked at her, at the lasagna, back at her. "I'm just not super hungry," I said. "Maybe later." Nick glanced at me. She watched me like a hawk for the rest of dinner. Every time I picked up my fork, she leaned in slightly. Every time I set it down, her eyes narrowed. Something was very wrong. That night, after she left, I told Nick I didn't feel well and went to lie down. He kissed my forehead and said he'd clean up, but I wasn't sick. I was panicking because I couldn't stop thinking about that food. I waited until I heard the shower running. Then I slipped into the kitchen, pulled the dish out of the fridge, and carefully scraped a small sample into a Ziploc bag. Then I drove it to my friend Casey's place. She's a vet tech, but she knows her way around a microscope. I asked her to humor me. I said I thought there might be something wrong. She raised an eyebrow, but didn't ask too many questions. 2 days later, she called me. "Eva, you need to sit down." My heart dropped. It tested positive for something not okay. I asked what she meant. She told me that the sample showed traces of a mild sedative, one commonly used for small animals. It was the kind that causes nausea, fatigue, and confusion in small doses. Larger doses? Worse. I was stunned. I asked her again, "Are you sure?" She said, "Positive. I ran it twice." I couldn't breathe. That wasn't just a weird lasagna. That was an attack. I didn't even wait. I drove straight to the police station, filed a report, gave them what I had, the sample, the story, the name. At first, they didn't seem to take it seriously, but the word toxin gets attention fast. They opened an investigation, and I kept quiet. For a week, I didn't say a word to Nick. I watched her come over again. She brought cookies that time. I didn't touch them. And then, one afternoon, there was a knock on the door. 2 uniformed officers. Nick answered. I stood behind him, silent. They asked for Marilyn, his mother. She wasn't there, but they had questions. They asked about the lasagna, about her visits, about anything that might seem strange. Nick turned to me, eyes wide. "What the hell is going on?" I looked at him, calm as ice. "Ask your mother." 2 days later, they came back. With her, in handcuffs. And I will never forget the look on her face when she saw me standing in the doorway. She went pale, like really pale, because she knew I knew, and worse, She knew I stayed quiet long enough for her to hang herself. Nick kept asking me the same question over and over. What the hell is going on? What did you do? Not, what did she do? Not, are you okay? Just blame. Deflected and wrapped in confusion. I sat him down, made him look me in the eyes. Your mother drugged my food, Nick. I had it tested. There was a sedative in the lasagna. He laughed at first. I stared at him. Because she hates me. Because she wants to scare me off. Because she thinks if I'm gone, she can finally have you all to herself again. He opened his mouth, closed it, looked down at the floor like he couldn't stand to face what was hanging between us. You're serious, he said finally. I filed a report. They took it seriously. You saw the cops. He sat there, motionless, like someone hit pause on his brain. I could almost hear the denial running through his mind like a broken record. No, not Mom. She's difficult, sure, but she's not dangerous. She couldn't have meant it. There must be another explanation, but there wasn't. And when the cops took her away, she didn't scream. She didn't fight. She just looked at me like I had broken some unspoken rule, like I'd betrayed her. Later that night, Nick didn't come to bed. I found him on the couch, staring at nothing. Did you know? I asked him. He shook his head. No. God, no. I swear. But his voice was so small, so uncertain, and I realized something right then. It wasn't that he didn't believe me. It's that deep down, he knew there was something wrong with her all along. But facing it would mean facing how long he'd been ignoring the signs. For the first time in our marriage, I didn't comfort him, because I didn't feel sorry for him. I felt relieved. Relieved that the mask had finally slipped, that there was no more pretending. The next few weeks were a blur of interviews, statements, phone calls from detectives and prosecutors. They found a stash of meds in her home, not prescribed to her, not labeled, just hidden in a cabinet behind old soup cans. They took photos, bagged evidence. Her lawyer tried to argue it was all a misunderstanding, that she had mixed something up, that she was old and forgetful, but the investigators weren't buying it. Because it wasn't the first time. Yeah, turns out, I wasn't her first target. Her first daughter-in-law had divorced Nick's older brother 5 years ago after a string of strange health problems. Migraines, nausea, dizzy spells. She had quietly disappeared from the family. Nobody asked questions. Now, she came forward. She told her story. She remembered the food. The way Marilyn would drop off casseroles, cookies, baked goods every time there was tension. And she remembered the moment she realized her illness stopped, when she stopped eating anything Marilyn made. That testimony blew the case wide open. Nick sat me down one night, pale and shaking. He looked like he'd aged 10 years in 2 weeks. I don't know who she is anymore, he said. I didn't respond, because I did. She was the woman I'd seen from day one. She was the venom hiding behind a smile. Nick started going to therapy, by himself. He asked me to go with him once. I said no, not because I didn't want to heal, but because I needed to heal away from him. I needed to know who I was without his excuses, without his blind spots. He didn't fight me on that. Eventually, the DA moved forward with charges: reckless endangerment, possession of controlled substances with intent to harm, tampering. She took a plea deal. No jail, but probation, court-mandated therapy, a restraining order, which I demanded. I never wanted to see her face again. Nick asked if we could try to move forward. I told him the truth. I don't hate you, Nick, but I don't trust you, he cried. I didn't. I filed for divorce 3 weeks later. Some people were shocked. How can you leave him? He's not the one who poisoned you. But in my heart, I knew. He wasn't the one who did it, but he let her in, over and over again. He ignored the signs. He made excuses. He chose comfort over confrontation. And in doing that, he chose her. Every time he didn't stop her. The last time I saw him, he was standing in the doorway of our now half-empty house, watching me load my car. He didn't try to stop me. He just said, I'm sorry. I nodded. Me too. Then I drove away. I didn't look back. The first night in my new apartment, I couldn't sleep. Not because I missed Nick, not even because I was scared, but because, for the first time in years, it was quiet. No footsteps in the hallway that didn't belong to me. No fake visits. No casserole dishes filled with control. Just silence. And somewhere in that silence, I started to breathe again. It's strange how long you can live in survival mode without even realizing it. You adapt to tension. You make excuses for the people who slowly tighten the noose around your neck. And then one day, it snaps. And you're left wondering how you ever called it home. The restraining order kept Marilyn away. She couldn't call me. Couldn't come within 100 yards. I didn't think she would, honestly. The humiliation of being arrested, being caught, of losing, it was a worse punishment to her than any jail cell. But the fallout? Oh, it lingered. People talked, whispers at work, cold stares from former friends who just couldn't believe the sweet, church-going mother of their dear friend Nick could ever do such a thing. Some thought I was lying. Some thought I was overreacting. A few believed me, but quietly. Cowards in the crowd, too afraid to say it out loud. It didn't matter. I wasn't trying to win a popularity contest. I was trying to stay alive. 2 months into my new life, I got an email. Subject line, "You're not alone." At first, I thought it was spam, but then I saw the sender's name, Elaine, Nick's brother's ex-wife, the one who had come forward during the investigation. I opened it, hands trembling. She wrote, "I know this is probably strange, but I wanted to reach out. I've been where you are. Not just the fear, but the shame. The feeling that you were poisoned, literally and emotionally, by someone who was supposed to protect you. I've spent years trying to rebuild myself. If you ever want to talk, I'm here." I cried, not out of sadness, but because someone finally understood. We met at a little coffee shop across town a week later. She looked older than I remembered from the family photos Nick had shown me, tired, but strong. We talked for hours. About Marilyn, about the way she controlled every room she walked into, how she used guilt like a weapon, and kindness like camouflage, how she'd turn the people you loved into pawns, and play them until they forgot whose side they were on. Elaine told me things I hadn't known, dark things. Years ago, before she left Nick's brother, she had a miscarriage, and right after it happened, Marilyn showed up with a bottle of special tea to help her recover. She drank it and woke up in the middle of the night, vomiting, disoriented, unable to stand. She thought it was grief, stress, shock. Now, she wasn't so sure. It never got tested. There was no proof, just pain, just suspicion. But sitting across from her, I realized something horrible. This wasn't just about me. It wasn't even personal. Marilyn wasn't targeting me, specifically. She was targeting control, and anyone who challenged that control, anyone who threatened the grip she had on her sons, they became disposable. I left that coffee shop shaken because I realized I could have died, and no one would have questioned it. A few months later, I got a call from Detective Harlow, the lead investigator on the case. He said something chilling. "You were lucky. The dose in your sample was small, but the stash we found at her place, that wasn't just sedatives. There were other things, stronger things." "What do you mean?" I asked. "Some of those chemicals, if they'd been mixed, even slightly incorrectly, they could have killed someone." I felt sick. "You think she knew that?" I whispered. He paused. "Honestly, I think she didn't care." I hung up and sat on my kitchen floor, just breathing. It hit me then. Really hit me. This woman had looked me in the eye, smiled, handed me a dish, and tried to hurt me, and she would have done it again if I hadn't trusted my gut. I started therapy after that. Real therapy. Not for Marilyn, not for Nick, not even to make sense of their madness. For me. Because I needed to understand why I let it go on so long. Why I kept trying to earn love from people who didn't want to give it. Why I stayed when everything inside me screamed to run. My therapist asked me a question during one session that broke me. She said, "What would you say to yourself 5 years ago if you could sit beside?" But later that night, I stood in the mirror, looked at my reflection, and whispered, "Leave. You don't have to prove your worth. You don't need their approval. You are not wrong for seeing the truth." And something inside me shifted. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was healing. In the spring, I started painting again. I picked up a brush, dipped it into the darkest blue I could find, and let the strokes bleed onto the canvas. I didn't think. I didn't plan. I just felt. Months passed. Nick sent me a letter, handwritten, no return address. He apologized again, told me therapy had helped him see the years of manipulation, the damage she'd done to his thinking, said he was grateful I got out. I never replied. Not because I hated him, but because I finally understood. Some people don't belong in your future. Even if they weren't the ones who poisoned you, they stood by and let it happen. And that's enough. I heard later that Marilyn moved in with her sister across the state. Quiet neighborhood, little to no visitors. She stayed out of trouble. But you know what sticks with me? That look on her face when the cops showed up. That instant switch from smug to stunned. She thought I'd eat her lasagna, smile through the sickness, and say thank you like a good little daughter-in-law. She never expected me to fight back. And that's why I survived. Because I stopped playing nice the moment I realized the game was rigged. It was supposed to be just another Tuesday. I was setting up for an art show, my first in years. Nothing big, just a local community gallery. They gave me a corner wall and a fold-out table. I didn't care. For me, it wasn't about attention. It was about expression, survival in color. But then I saw her name, buried deep in the RSVP list printed by the event coordinator, handed out to artists and vendors. Marilyn Benson, guest of Clarice Monroe, her sister. At first, I thought it had to be a coincidence. Another woman with that name, but I knew better. I felt it. Like static in the air, like a warning whispered in the pit of my stomach. She was coming, to the one place where I finally felt like I'd taken something back. I stood there for a long time, gripping that list, my fingers creasing the paper. The old version of me would have panicked, canceled, disappeared, but not now. I stayed. I hung every piece, signed my name in full. I wore a dress that made me feel powerful, not pretty, bold lines, clean colors, no room for apology. People came, walked the gallery, smiled. Some asked about the pieces. I talked when I wanted to, stayed silent when I didn't. And then, she walked in, Marilyn. She looked smaller than I remembered, thinner, older. She wore a scarf over her hair and glasses she didn't used to need. And at her side, Clarice, oblivious, chatting to someone near the wine table. Her eyes scanned the room and then landed on me. For a second, she froze. And in that moment, I saw it. Not guilt, not fear, shame. She turned, as if to leave, but I stepped toward her, just 2 steps, enough to let her know. I saw her. I wasn't hiding. I wasn't afraid. She looked at me, jaw tight, lips pressed into a pale line. Then she nodded, once, barely, and walked away. She didn't stay, didn't speak, didn't pretend. She just left. And that was all I needed, because I won. Not by dragging her name through the dirt, not with court documents or whispered warnings, but by simply being where she thought I wouldn't dare stand. Out in the open, paint on canvas, truth on walls, name on display. I wasn't the woman who flinched anymore. I was the woman who watched her walk away. That night, I stayed after everyone else packed up. I sat alone in the middle of the gallery, surrounded by my work, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not the kind you fake at family dinners or swallow behind closed doors. Real peace, because I'd finally turned every ugly thing she gave me into something beautiful. And I'd done it without her permission. It's strange, the things you carry with you. I used to carry fear of not being believed, fear of seeming dramatic, fear of becoming the problem. Then I carried silence, that heavy, aching quiet you wear like a second skin when no one wants to hear the truth. And then, I carried rage, for what she did, for what he allowed, for the parts of myself I gave away just to survive their approval. But now I carry something else. My keys, my canvas bag, the scent of fresh paint on my hands, the freedom of locking my own door behind me at night, knowing no one is coming in uninvited. I don't look over my shoulder anymore. I don't flinch when the doorbell rings. I don't shrink to make anyone else feel comfortable. I still think about her sometimes. Marilyn, I wonder if she ever thinks about me. Not the version of me she tried to poison, but the one who refused to stay poisoned. Maybe she sees me in her nightmares. Maybe she doesn't. Doesn't matter. Because I don't see her when I close my eyes anymore. I see color, movement, strength, and I see the younger version of myself, the one who sat at a dinner table with a fork full of lasagna and a stomach full of dread, finally smiling. She made it, not because someone saved her, but because she saved herself. One no at a time, one boundary at a time, one breath at a time. I don't tell this story to relive it. I tell it so someone else out there knows. You're not imagining it. You're not being dramatic. You're not crazy. If your gut says something's wrong, it probably is. If someone's trying to silence you, it's because they're afraid of your truth. Sometimes, it comes wearing pearls. Sometimes, the most dangerous people are the ones who say, "Bless your heart," while slipping poison into your dinner. But survival? It doesn't always roar. Sometimes, it whispers, "No more." Thanks for watching. If this story gripped you, if it felt too real, or if it reminded you of something you've survived, know this, you're not alone. Like, share, subscribe, and as always, stay sharp, stay safe, and never underestimate the quiet strength of someone who refuses to be silenced.